This is Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Nun Beis, and we're holding on the bottom of Nun Aleph Amid Beis. We are 5 lines from the bottom. Ta Shema, and we're in the middle of a sugya of whether Kiddushin has to be Misurin Labia or not. And to put that into English, what that means is, does every act of Kiddushin, which of course we know is the first stage of the marriage process, that is Erusin. Does Erusin need to be something that could eventually lead to Bia, to Tashmish, or not? Says the Gemara, Tashima Shnayim. Again, 5 lines from the bottom. Nun Aleph Amid Beis. Tashima Shnayim Shekitshu Shtei Achayos. 2 people married, 2 sisters. Zayin Edei Zekidish, Zayin Edei Zekidish. We have Ruvain and Shimon that married Rachel and Leah, and each one is not sure which sister he married. What's the halacha? Zen oisin shnei gittin, v'zez oisin shnei gittin. Each one has to give 2 gittin. So the Gemara proves that what do we see? Clearly there was some Kiddushin, even though Ruvain and Shimon are of course never going to be able to live with Rachel or Leah, as they're not sure which one they married. So clearly you do not need Kiddushin to have a potential possibility to be Masurin Libya. Explains the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom. No rayo. Hachanami shehokra l'bseif nisabra. That nisarvu, Originally, they knew which one they married. Only later, they got confused. So at the Shas Kiddushin, at the moment of marriage, they did indeed know which one they married. And therefore, it was a good Kiddushin. They cannot bring you proof. They Katani in Yodei, Avlo Katani in Yodua, they did not know. Says they don't know right now. Shemami, no, it's a good raya. Says the Gemara Yachi, Maila, member of that shoe. What's the Chiddush? Sefer Tzrichle, the Chiddush is the Seifa. What does the Seifa say? The Seifa says, Meis. What happens if both of these brothers died? Lazach, Reuven and Shimon each have a brother. Each one does chalitza to both of them. And we learned this in Yevamos extensively. If one brother leaves over one brother and one brother leaves over 2 brothers, and this is a little bit confusing, the one with one brother, he has to do chalitza to both of them. Why? He's not able, as the Top Rashi speaks out, he cannot do anything more than that, because he might end up being involved with achais ziku kasai, the sister, via an entity of zika, that once there is a zika of 2 sisters, you can't marry them due to the isser of achais ziku kasai, v'hashnayim, and the one that has 2 brothers, echad chayles, one does chalitza, and that final brother, v'echad mihamim, he is allowed to do yibum. However, what happened if they both went and they married each a different sister? We don't make them get divorced. So this din that if they both come early and they got married, you don't make them get divorced. Says the Gemara, this is the Chiddush. Only if there originally was chalitza by the one brother. Again, Reuven and Shimon married Rachel and Leah. Each one doesn't know whom they married. Reuven and Shimon died. Reuven and Shimon have brothers. Reuven has 1 brother, Shimon has 2 brothers. So if Reuven's 1 brother does chalitza, and then Shimon's 2 brothers go and do Kiddushin, the halacha is they can stay married. Aval Yevumi. However, if Shimon's 2 brothers did Yibam V'adar Michlatz, and then Reuven's brother did chalitza, loy, the Kapaga Yavam Lashuk, because what's going to happen is there's going to be an Isser of Yavam Lashuk, because at that moment there was not a Chalitza done, and therefore there's a situation of Yavam Lashuk. Continues the Gemara, Ta Shema, trying to prove whether Kiddushin has to be Misurin Labir or not. 5 lines down. Nun Beis Amid Aleph, Ta Shema, Detani Tiv Yomi, learns Tiv Yomi. What happens if we have a man with 5 sons and another man with 5 daughters? One of your daughters is married to one of my sons. Kol achas v'achas u'icha chamisha gittin. They all need 5 gittin. Meisach, a man of one of them died. Kol achas v'achas u'icha arba gittin v'chalitza me'acha mehem. And if you're going to tell me that in this case, the only reason why we say potentially could have worked is why? Just like we started off today by answering Kishahokul B'Saif Nis Abru at the time of the Kiddushin, they knew it only later on they got confused. He said explicitly a lashon, a language which was ambiguous. So clearly at the moment of Kiddushin, he did not know. Because he said one of your daughters to one of my sons, and there's 5 of them, so it's clearly undefined. Tiyofta, Tirava, Tiyofta, Ve'elchsa, Kavasei, Da'abaye, V'yal Kigam. Says the Gemara, this is one of our Yal Kigams, that Lamaisa, we do not need Kiddushin to be Mesur and Labiyah, like the Shita of Abaye. Continues the Gemara, we're about 12 lines down at the 2 dots, and then Beis Amud Aleph. Maisa b'chamisha nashim, quoting the din of the Mishnah, that there were 5 women. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Shema Mina Minas Arba, we can learn 4 dinim from our Mishnah. V'noked Rav Yadei Tlas, and Rav learned 3. Shema Mina, number 1, Hamakadesh. Nope. Hamakdesh b'peiros. If someone... No, I was right the first time. Hamikadesh, I thought it was Hamakdesh Peiros. No, can't marry fruit. Hamikadesh, he is getting married. B'peiros, with fruit. Shavias of Shavias Mekudash, it works, because that was one of the details in the Mishnah. Ushma Mina, Kitcha B'gezel. He was, because it wasn't his days. So I feel B'gezel, even for hers. Mimai, how do I know? The Mishnah said, Shalem Isa was hers, Shal Shavias Isa. So what do we see? Taima Dishvias. We see it from the fact that Ushvias, the Hefker was Hefker. That's why potentially could yes work. Hadishar Shani Shavua any other year, Lo, it would not work because it wasn't his. So we see 2 din, and we see din number 1 that Lamaisi you could get married with Paris Shavias, and we see din number 2 that Lamaisi you cannot get married with something which is Gezel, even if it's her item that you're stealing. Ushmamina number 3 says Rav Isha Nasish Shliach Chaverta. One woman can be a shliach to accept Kiddushin for a friend, even if via that shlichos, via that acceptance of Kiddushin, she is becoming a co-wife. 3 dinim we learn from the Mishnah. V'idach, what is din number 4, Mahi? Kiddushin shem mesur labiyah. The 4th din is regarding Kiddushin shem mesur labiyah. Says the Gemara, as we just finished extensively learning, and we actually proved, and not like Rava and rather like Abaye, it does not have to be mesur labiyah. Says the Gemara, why doesn't Rav count this as one of the dinim? Misham de mesafkale, because Rav himself was misopik. Ikabaya ikirava, as we just finished in the previous Gemara. Says the Gemara, Kisalik Rav Zera, and Rav Zera went to Eretz Yisrael from Bravel. Amrullah Shemaitza. He said the aforementioned Shemaitza, this din of Rav learning out the 3 dinim. You could yes get married with the Shvias, you cannot get married with the Gezel. You could yes act as a shliach for your friend. Come to Rav Yechon in front of Rav Yechonon. Amar le Rav Yechonon responds, "Mi Amar Rav Achi, did Rav really say this? V'hulay Amar, but did he not? V'Amar Rav Yechonon taught us Gezel v'lanasei shuabaylim." If there's gzela without the yish, yish means you gave up hope ever getting back the item. So if you have gzela without yish, neither party is able to make the entity hektish. One of them because it's not theirs. That's the one who stole it because it's not his, because the other person was not miyayish, the owner. The owner, it's not in his possession. So we see that Rav Yochanan clearly holds that one who steals an item does not have any ownership over it. So why was Rav Yochanan surprised at this din of Rav? Rav Yochanan himself concurs, just like Rav Yochanan holds you can't be makdish a stolen item. Rav says you can't get married with a stolen item. Answers the Gemara, Hachi Kamerle, Mi Amar Rav Kavasi. What he meant to say was, does Rav hold like me? Of course, I, Rav Yochanan, hold those to this din. But he was in wonderment that Rav actually agrees with him. Meisvei, now we ask on the actual din of being Mekadesh, marrying someone with a stolen item, 6 lines to the bottom. Keshel, Gezel, Bechamas, Begneva, 3 forms of stealing, robbery and stealing, or in plain sight or at night. You grab a cell from her hand in the kitchen, you marry her with it. What's Allah says the Braisa? Mekudeshes, so I tell him you can't get married with a stolen entity. Explains the Gemara, Hasam bekezel dida. Says Gemara, 1 second. Hamiktani seifa, but the seifa says Shachatav Selam Mishalah. You grabbed her, Selam Achal Dereisha bekezel Alma. Stam gezel askinon. So why are you telling me it's only a case of her gezel? Explains the Gemara, Brusha Kamefarish. We're explaining. What is this case of Kitcha Begezel Chamas? What is the case? Going, for example, and that's going to be where it's going to be a good Kiddushin. Only, says the Gemara, if it's her Gezela. So we thought that it was a raya that you could be Mekadesh with any Gezela. Says the Gemara, no. We only have a raya that you could be Mekadesh with what? With her Gezela. So asks the Gemara, the Kash that everyone's wondering on the top of the Bezim and Beis. Vamas, these are the Gezel Dida. But that was the case in our Mishnah. The case in our Mishnah was Gezel Dida. We said it was Shvius, it was hers. That was Gufa, the case of the Mishnah. So what's going on over here? And yet, V'kamer Rav Eino Mikudeshes. Explains the Gemara, La Kasha Hadishadich. Afterwards, prior Shidduchim, then we'll say it is a good Kiddushin. But if not, not. Continues the Gemara with the story. Aisa, there was a woman that became Mashye Kara b'mishilcha demaya, who's washing her feet in a wash basin full of water. B'mishilcha demaya. Also, a certain man comes and chatav zuzi mechavre and grabs a zuz from his neighbor, throws it. V'shadla throws it to her. Number says to her, you're married to me. Also, who Gavri committed Rav, that man keeps in front of Rava, and Amar and Rava says, lest the Chosh, Lahad Rav Shimon, do we not suspect that which Rav Shimon said, Amar Stam Gezela, when you steal something, Yesh Bailam Have, that the owner is Miyayish, and therefore, since in this case you stole it in front of the owner, therefore, we assume that there was Yesh, and therefore, the opposite. Lest the Chosh Lahad Rav Shimon, we're not worried for Rav Shimon, said Rava, Amar Stam Gezela Yesh Bailam Have. We hold that it's not Yush. Therefore, that's the reason why it's not a good Kiddushin. Continues the Gemara with another story. So there was an artist, there was a sharecropper. The Kaddish that was Mekadesh Moisa de Shamchi, the handful of onions. Also, Rava, Amar le Manachalach. Rava asked, who gave you this portion? Who allowed you to take the onions? They weren't yours. They were stolen. Therefore, there's no Kiddushin. Says the Gemara of Hani Mili B'Muza. This is only with a handful of onions. Aval Kisha. But if with a bundle of onions, then it would be a good Kiddushin. Why? Matzi Amar Le Anashakli Kisha. Because then the person who took the onions could say, Anashakli Kisha, Shakalat Kisha. If I take a bundle, you take a bundle. Kisha ki Kisha, meaning he's a sharecropper. Sharecropper, by its very definition, is going to get a portion. So suggests the Gemara, if the actual bundle, if it's a set amount, then he could say, no, this is my portion, and therefore there would be a good Kiddushin. Continues the Gemara with another story. How Sar say, there was a person that was a brewer, the Kaddish Bebruma de Shechra, that married a woman with the date remnants that wasn't his, who belonged to the owner of the brewery. Also married the Shechra's owner comes, Ashchei Amar Leia, my lo tasif, may I charifa. And the owner says, why did you give from those sediments? Why didn't you give from the more flavorful sediments? Clearly showing, seemingly, that he wasn't upset that he took the stuff. Asli Kamei de Rav, he comes in front of Rava. Amar said, Rava, loy amru klaches yafais elel inyan shuma. Only with regarding to truma, that if the owner comes along and says, why didn't you take by the better ones? Bilvad. That's when we say that from there we can infer that the owner is happy, but not in this case. What's this case of truma? We've had this case, but the Gemara quotes it again. The Tanya, as you learned in the Braysa, Ketzad, Amru, Tayrim, Shleimi Das. What's the case of giving truma without the consent of the owner? Truma, so truma, it's good truma. Harishiyar, the Terchsadeh Chaver, you go into your friend's field, Veliket Vitarim, and you're taking truma, Shleibir shows without permission. If we're worried that you're stealing in truma, so truma v'imlav, then yes, truma, so truma. How do you know you're taking the guy's stuff without his permission? How do you know whether it's gezel or not? Imlav. Hare, we know by the fact, Shabbat Balabayis, if the Balabayis comes to Matsu and finds you, Vamrla, and he tells you, Klach, it's a yafais. Why don't you go take from the better stuff? So if there's actually better stuff from them, then truma sa truma. Vimlav, if there's not actually better stuff from them, then ain't truma sa truma. Hayabaylim elaktim, as even the Bailim are picking and adding on to that which you did, then whether the owner told you to take from other stuff or not, but it's only in the case of Truma that do we say that the Balabai is showing you whether he wants it or not, will allow the Truma to work. In our case, from Kisufu David, Ve'ena Mikudeshes, could be the owner of the brewery is just embarrassed, and therefore there is no Kiddushin. We continue with the Mishnah, about 10 lines from the wide lines on Nun Beis Amid Beis, says the Mishnah. HaMekadesh v'chelkoi ben kodshei kodshei ben kodshei kalim. Einoi mekudesh, as we go into the world of kohanim. If a woman is mekadesh, if a woman is mekudash, meaning if someone is mekadesh, this woman, whether it's with kodshei kodshei, whether it's kodshei kalim, different levels of kedusha. What's the halacha? She is not married. B'maiser sheni. If she's married Meiser Sheni, then what's the halacha? Beim Shayum Meizir, lo Kiddush doesn't work if you're a Meir. Whereas if Yehuda Imer, no, B'shoigeg, then it doesn't work like Kiddush. But B'meizer, Kiddush. U'behektish, if someone marries a woman with hektish, B'meizer, it works Kiddush, because hektish, B'meizer, goes to chulin, your mal, you used it incorrectly, but Lamaisa, you're allowed to get then benefit from it. B'shoigeg, lo Kiddush, if you're a Meir. So if Yehuda Imer, B'shoigeg, Kiddush, B'meizer, lo Kiddush. So let's just begin. The Gemara says, the Gemara name Asisan to like Rav Yosi Aglili. Let us suggest that the Mishnah is not like Rav Yosi Aglili. The Tanya we learned in a Bryce, Rav Yosi Aglili Darshan Malu Malu B'Hashem. Says the Torah, if one commits Me'ilah against Hashem, the rabbis kachim kalim shehein memayni divrei Yosi Aglili. Rav Yosi Aglili learns out from here that kachim kalim, lower level of karbanos, belong to the owner. It's mamin bailim, and therefore, according to Rav Yosi Aglili, you certainly can marry with them. But the Mishnah seemingly says not. Says the Gemara, no. I feel like Rav Yosi Aglili, you can really go with yes, Rav Yosi Aglili. Ki Rav Yosi Aglili mechayim. Rav Yosi Aglili is only discussing when the animal is alive. Because once the animal is geshachted, once the animal is slaughtered, then Mishochan Gavaya Kazachu, then you're taking it from the table of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dekanami, and this is precise in the Mishnah, beautiful raya. Because when does it become the chilik of the koyin? That's only after Shchita. So concludes the Gemara, our Mishnah could indeed fit even with the Rav Yosi Aglili. The Rav Yosi Aglili is Chiddush. It's only while the animal is alive. We'll pick it up from the 2 dots of the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.